In a matchup established from tradition, rivalry, and high expectations, the Orange saw their most anticipated contest of the season crumble away, falling to the number 2 team in the country, the Duke Blue Devils. SU suffered its largest loss of the season, an 83-54 blowout that turned a once sold-out event into just an ordinary basketball game. At the halfway point of the season, the Orange sit in the bottom part of the ACC standings with hopes of making the conference tournament on the rocks. But they have a chance to get back in the win column as Boston College returns to the JMA Wireless Dome this Saturday. We'll have everything you need to know about the Orange and the Eagles because it's Cuse Countdown and it starts right now. Hello friends and welcome inside the CitrusTV studios for another edition of Cuse Countdown. Chloe Smarz joined alongside by Gino, Antimarino, and Della, Piana. We have the Italian Stallions on the desk today.
I like that.
And we're getting you set for a Saturday afternoon clash in the Dome between Syracuse and Boston College. The Orange guys coming off their worst loss of the season to number 2 team in the country, and Duke, the final from that game, 83-54 from Wednesday night. And guys, this was a game where Syracuse on paper didn't really have a shot. The first half looked a little bit promising, but then the second half, oh boy, what a disaster. Gino, they were 17.5-point underdogs in this game, and it felt even worse.
You know, to be honest with you, Chloe, I didn't think it was that horrible. Yes, listen, they got blown out at the end of the game. But listen, this is the number 2 team in the country for a reason. Duke had a 5-star coming off the bench, right? Syracuse did its best to try and combat that. But at the end of the day, they're just not as talented, Andrew, and it's as simple as that. 14-point differential at the half, not great, but I thought Syracuse did an excellent job orchestrating the 2-3 zone. Cooper Flagg had just 11 points in that game. It just goes to show that they did an excellent job of shutting down some key players, and also Syracuse out-rebounded Duke 33-32. Again, that 2-3 zone for Syracuse looked pretty solid. I get there's some weaknesses that Syracuse had in the game, but at the end of the day, I thought the Orange played pretty solid overall.
You thought that 2-3 zone was good?
Yes!
Did you see what happened after they went to the 2-3 after the 12-minute mark? Duke knocked down 3 straight threes.
They're going to do that. That's a good Duke team.
They were playing man-to-man defense in the first 8 minutes. Duke went 4 of 11 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. They switched to the zone defense, now they hit 4 straight. How does that work? Yeah, I get it. It worked against Cal. This is Duke, the number 2 team in the country. That's unacceptable. You can't do that.
You got to acknowledge the fact that Cooper Flagg, though,
11 points.
11
Hey,
points.
get him a clipboard. Apparently, he knows how to coach defense. Jeez.
I'm not a defensive
Because
guy.
a big issue in this game was obviously the Orange struggled with the turnovers. Duke dominated their offensive performance all game. 14 turnovers, including 12 steals, and the Blue Devils scored 23 points off those turnovers. Yeah. Andrew, where do you point the issue to? Is it Duke being so good, or is it Syracuse just being so sloppy?
Can I just point my finger at everyone on Syracuse? I mean, it's unbelievable. Syracuse has played 23 games this season, and in 19 of them, they've had double-digit turnovers. You're not going to win a lot of games by doing that, never mind the number 2 team in the country. This team averages the 3rd most turnovers in the conference this season, just north of 12. And it's a rhetoric we've been saying all season long, Gino, right? Because every single game, after every single game, I should say, I hear Adrian Autry saying, we're working on turnovers.
It's the same coach speak every time.
It's unbelievable the fact that this team cannot get it right. And yeah, Chloe mentioned it. This Duke defense is one of the best they'll face all season long. Top 5 in the entire country in points allowed. But still, turnovers are turnovers, no matter who is on the defensive end, and Syracuse continues again and again to shoot itself in the foot.
Look at those numbers, the last 5 games for Syracuse. You know the average in the last 5 games for turnovers for Syracuse?
Tell me.
13.
That's
you know its
lot.
opponents? 6. That's a big differential, Andrew, and it's because of the sloppiness. It's because of the stagnant offense. It's literally just J.J. Starling and everybody get out of the way and watch. I mean, they could buy tickets.
Yeah,
they could sit in the stands and do that.
Yeah, they're watching.
Guys, we'll get to J.J. in a bit, but let's give some credit, right? I know you were a big fan of Syracuse, but the first half, not too bad. I mean, they were only down by 14 going into halftime, allowing just 37 first half points, but then, like I mentioned before, second half, it all falls apart. Gino, I know this is something you're very passionate about, that Syracuse cannot play a full 40 minutes of basketball. What do you point the issue to? Where do you think it's going wrong? I know you're going to point it on Coach Red, but go ahead.
I think you have to. I really do. I think you have to blame it on coaching. And I'm not trying to put Adrian Autry in the hot seat, but I think he's kind of done it himself. This team does not get fired up for these types of games, Andrew. There's no reason you can't play a full 40 of just rough and tough basketball. I'm not saying you have to go down and hit every shot. I'm not saying you have to hold Cooper Flagg to 0 points, which I thought they did a pretty good job of defending him. But you got I have to see something. I have to see some sort of motivation. This team has not outscored its opponents in the second half in the last 4 games, Andrew. It's a result of Syracuse not playing a full first and second half, and that's cost them big time.
And it's not even really that. It feels like Syracuse needs to set an alarm clock before the game. They've only led at the first media timeout just 6 times this season. The other 17 times, they've been tied with Colgate or trailing. You're not going to win a lot of games by that recipe. And again, we've seen it again and again with this team, this slow start. They come back to bite them. And even those differences in the first and second half, it doesn't help them either.
I feel like it's been the story for them this entirety of the season. They have talent. They really do. But it just hasn't been able to put together for 40 minutes, Gino. But it's clear that you guys mentioned the only form of offense for this team is coming from J.J. Sterling. It's the J.J. show. And if that isn't working, well, then there's no hope. And I feel like what they want is J.J. to drop 20-plus points. That's a little bit unrealistic.
They don't want him. They need him.
But maybe asking him to do too much, Andrew. J.J. Sterling, he is the only option for the Orange. Do you think they're putting too much pressure on him, or do you need other players to step up, and who do you think that is?
Yeah, I would think they're putting too much pressure on him, but the easy answer is no, they're not. Like, who else are you going to go to in this lineup? Duke had a great recipe last night where all you have to do is guard number 2 with the best guy on the floor, wearing number 2 for Duke in Cooper Flagg, and that just limits his offense because the only guy you can go to on the floor for the Orange consistently, again, is J.J. Sterling. And for teams this season, all you have to do is guard number 2 closer. You can put all 3 guys, you can put all 5 guys on J.J. Sterling and you would still win this game because no one else on the floor is trustworthy other than number 2. It's simple as that.
And look at those numbers. J.J. Sterling, I hate to say this, Andrew, but he's not a true number 1 guy. And so you're going to get those games like he had against Stanford where he only had 7 points. He had 12 against Duke, but he shot 5 for 15 with that high of a shooting volume. I would hope you're putting up double digits in points, but like Chloe was saying, there's not really a second option other than Donnie Freeman, who's been out of the lineup for some time.
Where's he been?
You've got Eddie Lampkin, who's averaging 10. But again, that's a big miss in the offense if you don't have someone else stepping up, which they don't right now.
I was literally going to say that. No Donnie Freeman. What is JJ going to do? They really missed someone like Judah Mintz who really helped complement his game.
And Malik Brown as well that we saw
played for Duke,
against Duke.
They could run the point now too if they want. Yeah.
They could.
This game against Duke, though, guys, clearly pointing to a huge issue for SU all season. There's no clear depth, and their struggles overall in their starting 5. The new landscape of recruiting and NIL. Coach Red addressing the Orange's ability to compete with the best of the best.
We got to keep building this thing, and obviously, when you talk about when we got into this league, college was different. Everybody needs to understand that college is different. That's the reality, and everyone, for us, we're not doing any different. Everybody's going through it, not everybody, but most, you got to kind of reshape this and get this thing going, and we will, and we will.
Will is alluding to someone that's coming in next year, Kai and Anthony. But anyways, no Donnie Freeman. The past 9 games, obviously. Eddie Lampkin, their biggest transfer. He was someone who dropped 20-plus points in the NCAA tournament a year ago for Colorado. Do you blame it on NIL, Gino, or do you blame it on Coach Red's recruit? Where do you point the issue to when Duke has a 5-star coming off the bench?
Well, I really just, I don't know. There's so many different angles you can take, Chloe, like you were saying. And yes, NIL is a problem, but at the same time, every team has to play in it. And so Adrian Autry, it's his second year at the helm. You don't want your head coach saying, I'm still trying to figure this out. He's a new coach, Andrew. I would hope he's kind of got it under his belt. I mean, yes, he's brought in some good recruits. He's bringing in Sadiq White, Kai and Anthony, as Chloe brought up. But again, you got to win. You got to put games together. And I just, there's a big hole in this lineup. Like we were talking about with Donnie Freeman out. Lampkin's the only other person averaging double figures in points other than J.J. Sterling. He's got 10. Lucas Taylor has had some flashes of being a good player, right? He had 19 against Cal, but then he had just 3 against Duke. There's no consistency in this team.
Oh, absolutely not. J.J. Sterling had the first 7 points of this game for Syracuse. It was basically Duke against J.J. in the first 9 minutes or so. And Naheem McLeod didn't show up to get that first Syracuse basket that wasn't related to J.J. Sterling with just about 9 minutes in the first half. And guys like Eddie Lampkin, Elijah Moore, Lucas Taylor, they played a combined 50 minutes. They each only made one shot. Like how does that make any sense in the world of NIL? That's the reason you brought in Eddie Lampkin to center that inside the paint, and it just hasn't panned out.
I think what Coach Red expected was these transfers to come in to make a bigger impact. They played lower level, technically, basketball.
I really agree.
But they really haven't stepped up to play this ACC-style basketball. It's technically one of the weaker conferences in the country. But when we come back here on Cuse Countdown, we meet the visitors. We'll break down Boston College's path to Saturday's matchup and how they stack up to the Orange. Stay with us. Welcome back to Cuse Countdown. That's Gino Antimarino. That's Della Piana. That's the Italian Stallion Gang. I'm Chloe Smarz. We're getting you set for Boston College and Syracuse in the Dome this Saturday afternoon. Guys, time to talk about the Eagles. It's a BC team that is just 2-9 in the conference play, but is coming off a late rally against Florida State before they lost to number 21 ranked Louisville on Wednesday night. But this is a team that has struggled this season, definitely not the season they were hoping for. They started off the season 6-1 through their first 7 games, but in their last 13 games, they've struggled 3-10 in the stretch, winless on the road, 1 game below 500. It's just been a hot mess for BC. Gino, I'm going to come to you. What do you point to as the issues for BC this season?
Well, we talked about earlier in the show about how Syracuse's offense, other than J.J. Starling, is pretty much nothing. The same can be said about BC, except it's Donald Hand Jr. that's been the J.J. Starling for BC. Other than him, it's really hasn't been a whole lot of offense. They're second to last in the ACC in assists per game. That just goes to show there's not a whole lot of ball movement. It's Hand Jr. just chucking up shots. That one was courtesy of Kelly the third on that buzzer beater against Florida State. So they have some flashes of guys stepping up, but for the most part, Donald Hand Jr., he's pretty much been the only guy on this team. BC is just one of just 6 teams to not have more than one player in the top 25 of ACC points per game, and one of the other teams is Syracuse. Andrew.
You got to feel bad for Earl Grant, though, right? Because he wins 20 games for the first time since 2011. Then your top 5 scorers all leave. Guys like Claudell Harris, Jaden Zachary, Devin McLaughlin, Quentin Posto, I felt like been there for 7 years, and then Mason Madden off to Utah. So these guys having to take elevated roles has really hurt BC because this is a whole new team than we saw last year that gave Syracuse a good run for their money and split that season series, but still, it's a completely different BC squad that just doesn't have the same elements as they did a year ago.
And you talked about a whole revamped squad for BC. 10 of the 15 players on this BC team are freshmen or sophomores.
There you go.
It's the BC team, too, guys. It's 16th in the ACC, right on the cusp with Syracuse to get into the ACC tournament in a few weeks. But one of those losses that came in that 13-game stretch came against Syracuse in Chestnut Hill, 79-71 the final back in early January. That game meaning a lot more for the Orange. They picked up just their second ACC win of the season behind a 26-point performance from, we talked about him all day, a healthy J.J. Starling. On the Boston College side, though, Donald Hand Jr. led the Eagles with 20 points. Andrew, when you look back at that game, what were your biggest takeaways, and what did that mean for Syracuse, and what did that mean for BC down the line?
I saw Kyle Cuff as the savior for Syracuse. I mean, they were down by 8 points with 9 minutes to go. You insert number 0 in the lineup, and he has all 10 of his 10 points in those final 9. And you're thinking, where's Kyle Cuff been all season long? He shows up in that final moment for Syracuse to really steal that victory from BC, in which the Eagles were really dominating all throughout. And you hit on it, Chloe. J.J. Starling was so impressive in that second half. 20 of his 26 points coming in that final 20 minutes, and it felt like a switch kind of flipped for him. Started to play a little bit more ISO ball that we've talked about that does work against a Boston College team, doesn't work against the Duke team that we saw last night, but J.J. Starling, he's got to get in his bag once again if he wants to give this team a chance against the Eagles.
Well, you talked about it, Andrew. Syracuse was certainly sharing the rock, as you can see, just 2 players on the screen, but Syracuse had 5 players finish in double figures, with Starling obviously with 26 points. In the 12 conference games that Syracuse has played this year, 5 players have reached double digits just 3 times, counting that BC game. And another thing, they played a full 40 minutes, Andrew.
Oh, really?
They went into halftime 37 apiece. And then in the second half,
for them.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Who would have thought?
yeah.
But they did it, and that's why they came away with the victory. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Very impressive, aren't they?
You guys mentioned Donald Hand Jr. earlier, and for good reason. The sophomore guard has truly become the big man on campus, leading the team in points and rebounds per game. One of the top guards in the conference, dropped 20 on SU in their first meeting of the season. He's coming off a career-high 31-point performance in their win over FSU. But guys, this is a player, Gino, who tore his ACL 30 seconds into his second game freshman year.
Yeah.
Comes back his sophomore year, and he's doing it all for BC. You can't really ask much more from him, can you?
No, he's really been a stud for this BC team, Andrew. And like Chloe was saying, he got injured in the second game of his freshman year, took off the rest of the year, went from 199 pounds to over 210 pounds.
So
he was hitting the weight room.
Like
I love
you.
it.
He's like you.
You know, I don't want to say that, but
All
you know, that's certainly not you, Andrew.
Oh, come on.
But no, and he really took that. He said that the injury was actually a blessing in disguise. Last year, had 5 points per game in just 34 games played. But then this year, Andrew, it's been a completely different story. He's averaging just under 16 a game. He's really been the driving force for this BC team.
And you have to give a lot of credit for taking that elevator role. I mean, he's jumped over 11 points in his scoring average, nearly 5 in his rebounding average. He's the do-it-all cat for the Eagles right now, and they're going to need him against Syracuse.
One of the best players in the rebounding department as well in the ACC.
As a guard as well.
It's incredible.
Well, guys, one of the biggest storylines going into this game, the dynamic front court duo of Chad Venning and Elijah Strong, both questionable for Saturday's matchup. These two are top 3 on the team in points and rebounds, so other players are going to have to step up. You have someone like Deion Brown, Joshua Beadle. I'm going to come to you, Andrew, on this one. Who needs to step up to be able to compete against Cuse?
I think I got to go to Beadle on this one. He's someone who really has to stretch the floor in this game for the Eagles, because no Venning down low means a little bit of a weaker post presence for Eddie Lampkin, and you talked about it a little bit earlier. How about that presence for Eddie Lampkin? It's very impressive for him. So if he gets a lot of him, I think Syracuse has a good chance to win this game. But not having Venning in the lineup is pretty decimating to this Eagles team.
I really like Deion Brown. He's averaging just 7 points a game, but he has been pretty solid in other games as well. He had 20 against UNC and SMU. And in that game against North Carolina, Deion Brown really took over. He's hitting some very contested shots. As you can see, the big 3 for BC on your screen right there. But I really like Deion Brown. He can rebound a little bit as well, efficient shooter. I think he could really have a good game against Syracuse.
Both Syracuse and BC both need a supporting cast. It can't be a one-man show this Saturday.
We got a supporting cast.
Of course. When we come back here on Cuse Countdown, it's time to get into the Super Bowl spirit. We'll give our own twist on the big game as Gino and Andrew get set for the Countdown Bowl. All that and more after this.
Yo, camping buddy. Okay, you guys ready?
Dude, I thought you were driving.
I thought you were driving.
Oh, I never said I was driving.
I definitely can't drive.
Okay.
If you're high, just don't drive. It's illegal everywhere. If you feel
Welcome back to Cuse Countdown. Chloe Smarz, Gino, Antimarino, Andrew, Della, Piana, previewing BC and Cuse's Saturday afternoon clash in the Dome. Before we give our keys to the game, guys, it's Super Bowl week. Many of our friends down in New Orleans, shout out Andrew Sullivan, shout out Ian Nicholas, getting set for Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl 59. So in that spirit, our producers thought it would only be fitting to give our spin on the big game with the Countdown Bowl, connecting it back to SU Men's Hoops. I'll give you guys a category, the theme, the spirit of Super Bowl, and you guys give your matches. You guys will kind of understand how this goes. One of the big things. You guys like that?
Yeah.
You guys are a big fan of the Super
Those
Bowl,
wings
too.
look tasty, too.
Of course,
they're
you're
not
going,
real.
going for the food.
Oh,
Gino.
they're not?
No.
All right, reel it in, you
Don't
two.
look back there.
Sorry.
Arguably the best part of the Super Bowl for fans, sports fans and non-sports fans, are commercials. My personal favorite are the dog and the horse ones. What are your favorites before we get into this question? I'm curious.
There's commercials at the Super Bowl?
Okay, moving on.
Nice. Good save.
Most commercials are meant to grab your attention, guys. So I'm going to go to you, Gino, in this first one. You know, it's in that spirit. Who's someone for SU, good or bad, that is grabbing your attention?
Well, it's kind of been a good and bad player that I'm going to list, and it's Kyle Cuff. Kyle Cuff has been someone that's caught my eye. He's the nickname the Energizer Bunny. Now, sometimes he's not all that energizing in terms of putting up points, but for the most part, he's gotten that lift coming off the bench for Syracuse. The game against Duke, though, 0 for 8 on the floor. I mean, he was just running around out there. I bet he was pretty as much tired as I was just watching him. You know what I mean? But
really? Oh, that's
he's had
bad.
6 double-digit games this season in points. He had 14 against Wake Forest. He's also someone that can eat a lot of minutes as well. 36 against Wake Forest, but then also 0 against Lemoyne. So he's someone that can really fluctuate game to game. He has caught my eye because of that disparity. You never know what kind of Kyle Cuff you're getting on a night-to-night basis.
Well, I'm going to use my player and use kind of an analogy here. You know those cars that come with all the bells and whistles, if you will? Well, this Hyundai of Lucas Taylor, he's got Smart Pack. Okay? He's got double figures in 8 of his last 10 games.
What was that?
Smart Pack?
Oh,
You never seen that commercial? That's my favorite one. I know you're talking about, Andrew.
Lucas
Continue.
Taylor, he does a bunch of things on his own as well. 19 points in that game you just saw against Cal to match his season high. Someone who's done a better job of elevating his game from behind the three-point arc. He's been jumping into that starter role as Chris Bell has kind of moved to that reserve. So 8 points per game in the last 10 starts for Lucas Taylor. He's been a solid addition from Wake Forest. Again, not the flashiest like you'll see in a Hyundai, but he still gets the job done.
Gino, what you need to do after the show ends is go watch the Smart Pack commercial.
It's got
great.
Smart
wait.
It's
wait,
great.
Oh, wait, do it again?
It's got Smart Pack.
Yeah, still on
It's one of my favorites ever. But guys, Super Bowls don't exist without a good Super Bowl party. Family, friends, whoever come together, eat a ton of buffalo chicken dip. It's a vibe. I'm going to be doing that
And
this
wings.
Sunday. And there's some here and there, and there's a party foul or two. And it's either your annoying friend or it's your uncle or both. So with that being said, Andrew, who's been disappointing you? A party foul, you might say.
Well, I know the easy answer is Gino Antimarino, but it's not. It's actually not Gino Antimarino.
Oh.
Yeah. Are you surprised?
I'm happy.
You should be surprised at that, but it's more so Jair Davis for Syracuse. Look, I had really high expectations for this guy coming in over from Delaware because he was supposed to be the big face that replaced Malik Brown on the interior there. And even Gino said it last night in our text chain. He said Jair Davis becomes Michael Jordan when his team is getting blown out. And that was so true last night against Duke. He put up 12 points, 10 of those in the second half when that game was already well out of reach. But again, so much hope for someone who, in the season opener, had 22 points, 12 rebounds against Lemoyne. And you're thinking, is this the new 4 that Syracuse was looking for from the portal? It just hasn't turned out to be that way.
All right, well, I'm going to go with a guy. Does this give it away?
Big fella.
No. Elijah Moore.
Bose.
Give me less of Moore. I can't. Listen, he has really struggled this year, and I get it. He's a freshman, but oh my, he had 2 points against Duke, 15 minutes of action, 13 games this season without a 3. He's got a bullseye tattoo on his elbow. I hope that's a temporary tattoo because, my goodness, it's about time to wipe it off. He has not found the bottom of the basket from 3 in so many games this season. He was supposed to be that 1-2 punch with him and Bell, but, I mean, the Monstars must have gotten to them because they have completely taken away their powers this season, Andrew.
Gino, you were very animated. By the way, I thought when you were doing this, you were flexing. So
The suit's kind of restricting me a little
there.
bit. The suit's restricting, you know.
And personally, guys, one of my favorite parts of the Super Bowl extravaganza is the halftime show. This year, Kendrick Lamar, by the way, swept the Grammys, is headlining the show in New Orleans. And many of the halftime shows, for most people, besides Dan Papp, are the most entertaining part of the entire game. So on that note, Gino, who's the most entertaining player for you for SU?
Well, you just mentioned it. It's Eddie Lampkin. He's got to be the most energetic, the most passionate. Listen, he flexes. He might not even be on the
He's
court,
no Michael
Andrew.
Jackson, yeah.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, listen, he's got the moves, though. He's got eyes in the back of his head. He can pass, he can dish. Now, listen, he's had some up and down games, but he's never afraid to get the crowd pumped up. I always love when he's going down in the paint, he's banging and slanging, and he looks out in the crowd and he flexes and he pumps his chest. That always gets the crowd fired up, regardless of how bad the loss is for Syracuse.
So what performer would you compare him to in Super Bowl history? Just give me one, please.
A Katy Perry left shark.
That was actually really good.
Yeah, thank you. I got
was
you.
good.
I like that. All right. My guy. We've
Go.
talked about him all show, but he's the prince of the halftime show. It's J.J. Sterling. There's no other answer for who is the most entertaining for Syracuse this season. J.J. Sterling, ever coming back from that injury just a month ago, I should say, 16 points per game, and it feels like we touched on it earlier, is the only guy on the floor that's getting it done on a game-in, game-out basis. I mean, just earlier in the season, do you remember that double overtime game against Youngstown State? He carried this team to win over the Penguins. He scored 38 points in order to get them to win that ball game. J.J. Sterling, he's been the do-it-all guy. He's still going to be the do-it-all guy because no one else on this team's helping him. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Now, there's not really supposed to be a winner of this countdown bowl, but I'm making this up, and there will be a winner. I'm going to go Andrew. On this one.
No, don't walk away.
Okay,
Nothing about
I'll stay.
Eddie Lampkin this season has been anything of entertaining.
Don't be a commander.
Anyways,
And just
that's
walk
enough
out
from the
in
three of
round,
us.
yeah.
And we come back here on Cuse
This guy.
Countdown. We take a look around the ACC and give our keys for Saturday's matchup. Stay with us.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.
Wrapping up shop here on Cuse Countdown. Chloe Smarz, Gino, Antimarino, Andrew, Della, Piana. Let's bring it full circle, guys. This weekend, Syracuse, Boston College in the Dome, Saturday afternoon. We broke it all down on both sides. Andrew, I'll go to you first on this one. Keys to this game.
Well, I'm gonna go with Gino's guy, and that's gonna be living with Eddie Lampkin. More so living and dying with Eddie Lampkin. Look, I really want Chad Benning to play in this game because you talked about it.
I do too.
Those guys bodying each other in the paint.
6'11" versus 6'9", 265
that's a
versus
combined
270.
500 pounds in the paint. Who doesn't love those old school Big East matchups where those two centers are John, they're wrestling, fighting for every single loose rebound. Eddie Lampkin did so. Okay, you're a little bit too
Sorry.
Eddie Lampkin did that in game 1 against BC. He had 10 points, 13 boards. He did all the little things right for him to pick up that victory.
They call me the Eddie Lampkin of my rec league.
And no, they don't.
My key to the game is Syracuse cannot be stagnant on offense. They have to move around because there's too many turnovers on this team, and that's a result of them just giving the ball to Sterling and saying, go to work. And that's not really worked out for them so far. So Syracuse has to have a lot of backdoor cuts, movement off ball, and I think that will result in some points for Syracuse.
Guys, let's go to my new favorite segment of CC this semester, and we're going to look at the predictions. Let's see how Adam, Avin, and crew did a week ago once that comes up there. I'm pretty sure they didn't do too well.
No,
But here we go. We have Adam Avin. He is 1-0 so far. Same with Nathaniel Cunningham and my old partner, AJ Myers, 0-1.
AJ, did you pick Cal? Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
AJ,
man.
that's a bad pick, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Let's move
a
on
good
to
trio.
the overall standings this semester. Nathaniel Cunningham leading the pack, only 3-point differential.
All right,
He's been
Nate.
pretty good. Then you got
Nate the Great.
AJ Myers, and you have Streetcar. They're at the bottom. That's what it looked like last semester when I was on Beat the Bookie, dead last because I was so bad at sports betting.
Chloe.
So maybe I could be better in predictions this year. I'm going to go to Gino first here. Who do you got in this matchup?
Well, I'm too cool to make these
Oh,
picks.
you're too cool for
Are
school.
you
huh?
serious?
I'm serious.
You're going to leave me out to dry with this?
Take it away,
All
Andrew.
right, fine. 'Cause Gino's too cool, I guess. I'm going to go Syracuse 71, Boston College 66, and I just harped on AJ Myers there a little bit. It's going to be just like the Super Bowl on Sunday. It's going to be die, Eagles, die. That's exactly what the Orange are going to do in this one. They're going to get it to Eddie Lampkin down low. He's going to feast if Chad Venning is not in this lineup. I expect J.J. Starling to go to work once again. Again, he had 26 points in this first matchup between these two teams. 20 of those coming in the second half. Hopefully they don't need those heroics once again, but I expect Eddie Lampkin, like you said, to have a huge game, and I think he will, Gino, because Syracuse desperately needs this win if they want to give themselves a shot in the ACC tournament.
Andrew, I just learned about you that you are an anti-Eagles fan, and for that, we're now friends.
I'm a Patriots guy.
You guys weren't friends before that.
So
Learning something new on air today.
go.
My prediction for this game, 75-62. I like Syracuse as well. It
I'm
would
here
be a
too.
sweep, but
Yeah.
Gino's way too cool for school.
Get out.
And that will do it for this episode of Cuse Countdown. Be sure to check us out on X and YouTube at CitrusTV Sports. For the three of us and our amazing producing crew, saying so long and enjoy the game.